Everybody, thanks for joining me in the live training this morning. Today I am on Hope. This is the one I've done one video of her, I believe, talking about her resistance, and I wanted to work that with her and then answer some questions. There was quite a few questions about that resistance. I figured we'd answer those on the camera today, and also had quite a few questions about that blue roan horse that I was working with her feet. And we'll answer those questions and any other questions y'all have. I want to thank everybody for joining me, and it's going to be a good ride today. So this is Hope. She's, I believe, 7 years old, if I remember right, and her owners want her to be trained for cow horse, National Rein Cow Horse Association. This is what our goal is. We'll see if we can get her there, which means she will need to do a reining pattern and cow work. Right now, I've primarily been working on her resistance in her body. That has been the first and the biggest issue that I needed to address. I just got on her and I was walking around for a few minutes waiting to start this. And as I'm walking her around, I can really feel how hard she hits the ground with her front feet. That is something that needs a lot of help, a lot of work, and we'll talk about why and how I do that. She has a few little ground issues, nothing serious. She don't like to stand in the cross ties. I worked her pretty hard yesterday, and then she stood in the cross ties for a couple of hours yesterday and stood good. So she wants to stand when she feels like she wants to stand. And she's also stood for several hours at my tie line out there before that. So the very first time I rinsed her off, I put her in my cross ties and started to rinse her, and she spun around and pulled my cross ties down, which is not a huge deal. I tie them on both ends in my wash rack with a piece of hay string. I want something to be able to break before they hurt themselves or tear something up. And that's kind of how I handle that. I don't care for the tie blockers. I don't care for the stuff that slides like that. The reason being, I feel like if they feel that give, whoa. I feel like when they feel that give of that slide and that tie blocker, it kind of encourages them to keep trying. Where this way, where I tie it with a piece of hay string, they feel that hard stop. And if they stop with the hard stop, great. That should encourage them to stay that way. But if they do panic, the hay string will break. And then if that happens, I just work on it. If they tear it down, it's not a big deal. It's stuff like that's going to happen. You set it up so that it's as safe as you can make it. I try to prepare them so that it's not a problem. But sometimes when they come in, it just is a problem. I just have to work on it and just work on it a little bit at a time. So as I'm walking her around, I was talking about how heavy she's hitting the ground with her feet. I have the Mona Lisa bit on her. After the video, I'll try to post a picture of that. Basically, it's a port, probably 1.5 inches with a cricket in it and a cover over the port. So it has a port that will put a little bit of contact on the roof of the mouth, but the port is actually filled in. The cricket is right even with the bit. So even though there's a port that will touch the roof of the mouth, there's no release of the tongue pressure. The cricket is right on the tongue. So she can move her tongue around and roll the cricket. You might hear it every once in a while. As I'm walking around, I've been kind of steering, pointing her nose. I haven't asked a whole lot with my legs. That is where, right there, I'm going to ask a little bit right leg because she looked left or looked right. That is where her biggest part of her resistance is in her shoulders, in her body. So I need to start the bend, counter bend off of my right leg. That's improved nice since it started. In the very beginning, she would just plant that foot and just push into it. One of the things that I've talked a little bit about, but I haven't really talked a whole lot about, is while I'm doing pretty much any movement that I'm asking for lateral movement, going forward, moving the shoulders, moving the hips. I've said in the past that I don't like to do it standing still. And the reason for that is if I'm standing still and I start asking her to flex, let's say I stand still, ask her to flex to the right, she's going to load this shoulder up. She's going to put a lot of weight right here. And with just about every horse, probably every horse I get in to some degree, I'm asking them to lift the shoulders and engage their back end. Some more than others. She's one that's more than others. So I don't ever ask for a flex from a standstill. I want the flex in the neck with the shoulders elevated and the back engaged. And when I'm doing that, it's even more than just movement. I'm going to pay attention to the rhythm of that movement. The horse is going to maintain its rhythm as long as it maintains its softness. Right there, she stayed kind of soft off my right shoulder. She maintained okay rhythm. The first thing that's going to happen, even before I put leg on and ask for lateral movement, is she's going to start losing her rhythm. That is the first sign that I'm going to have of resistance. And the reason for that is as she's losing her rhythm, she's starting to kind of load up that front end to prepare to push against whatever contact I'm going to ask. So I always want movement, and I always want to try to maintain my rhythm. That's why when I'm walking a circle, working these circles, I'm not going really, really tiny. I'm going big enough that I want to maintain rhythm. Any questions so far I need to address? Okay, yeah, what you got from... Okay, so when Hope, that's this horse, gets further along, they would like to see how I handle her from wanting to carry herself behind vertical. In the first video I did of her, there was a lot of resistance, and she was behind vertical a lot. And she'll still get behind vertical some. If you saw that video and watching her now, she's getting behind vertical less. What happens when a horse is getting, and let's talk about what behind vertical is to begin with. Whoa. So if I'm walking her around, I really want her forehead basically perpendicular to the ground. When she gets behind vertical, that means that her chin is in further and behind vertical. And when that happens, that is kind of a resistance to pressure, resistance in the body, evading the bit, kind of evading the bit. And that's not something that you want. So as she gets better with the resistance in her body, really the behind vertical is just gradually going to go away on its own. I'm really not going to have to do much about it because the behind vertical is a symptom of the resistance. When I make the resistance go away, the symptom is going to go away. So it's really not something that I have to work on. Basically, when she is behind vertical, she is saying that there is resistance. So that's, if you have a horse that wants to get behind vertical, almost always that is resistance evading the bit. And if you just work on whatever that resistance is, that evading the bit, the behind vertical is going to go away. One There's very few exceptions. But if you saw the videos that I had of K. Sarah, he would get behind vertical, but it wasn't that way. He wasn't resistant. He wasn't trying to evade work. It was almost the opposite with him. He was really trying to overperform. He was a very high level dressage horse that I had in here a while back, and he would get behind vertical. And his wasn't resistance. He was just trying to overperform. So instead of uh, handling it with working resistance, since that wasn't what it was, I just kind of tapped him with my legs a little bit, almost like wanting to create a little bit resistance, almost kind of poking at him so he'd kind of stiffen his body up just a little bit. And in that case, that would make the resistance go away. Everything is a scale. If you think of a 12-inch ruler and 6 is perfect, 1 is extreme, one direction, not good. 12 is extreme, another direction, not good. 6 is where you want it to be. There are things you can do to push the scale down to 1. There are things you can do to push the scale down to 12. And if I have her and she's resistant in the shoulders, I'm not going to bang on her because that's just going to cause more resistance. She's already down here around 2 or 3. And if I bang on her, that's going to push her further down towards 1. But now, K. Sarai was up here at 12. He was almost like too wiggly. So I would kind of bang on him a little bit to kind of stiffen him up, tighten him a little bit, which would knock him down towards 6. I don't know if that makes any sense to you or not. Typically there's things you want to do with a horse. There's typically things you don't do because it causes problems. Well, some of those things that you don't do because they cause problems need to be done sometimes to get the horse back in the middle to that 6 where it needs to be. If that don't make any sense, ask me a question about it, and I'll see if I can make it make sense. Yes, yeah. So someone also asked in the previous video about whether a chiropractor would help her. And chiropractor is not her issue. The thing about any procedure, chiropractic, MagnaWave, joint issues, you do those things to address that issue. Her issue is not chiropractic. She does not have anything out anywhere. And she actually was seen by a chiropractor before she came here. And there is nothing out. And by riding her, I can tell there is nothing out. Hers is all muscular resistance. Now, what possibly would help her would be MagnaWave. That would relax some of these muscles that have been tight from this resistance. Now that would probably help her, and that's something I'll have set up to do. You have to, just like that ruler, you have to address what's going on. If you're just taking shots in the dark about trying a chiropractor, trying MagnaWave, trying whatever, but you're not really looking at the situation, you're just throwing money away. So chiropractor is not what she needs. Now, anytime you have chiropractor work, you need to have like physical therapy, muscular work to make everything stay in line. All that goes together. But her issues are really more in her brain than anything else. She's resistant. She wants to say no. So that causes her to push with the muscles. I ask her to do something, and her first thought is, I don't want to. And that's not a medical issue. That is a training issue. That's a physical therapy issue. Very, very often when there is something going on with a horse, people want to find a medical issue for it. And you typically will rule out medical issues first because you don't want to push a horse to do something that's in pain. But way, way too often, let's talk about that ruler again. You want that horse to be at 6, right in the middle of that ruler, which is just where that horse wants to be. One end of the ruler is medical issues. One end of the ruler, the horse just needs to be worked and rode. Way, way too often, people work on this medical issue end of the ruler and try to make it something when actually they're not on that end of the ruler. They're on the other end of the ruler. The horse needs to be worked. And the reason I think generally people do that, for one thing, they're worried about making the horse do something when it's in pain, but also on the owner's part, it's easier and usually cheaper to have a chiropractor look at the horse adjustment and the problem be over. You have a chiropractic adjustment, comes out, pay, horse is all done. Where if it's like her, a mental issue, resistance issue, that's a whole lot more involved, and it involves a whole lot more investment from the owner. Usually involves getting a trainer involved. That's really not the direction that people want to go in. So because they don't want to go in, right there, she went behind vertical when she got resistant there. People don't want to go in that direction. They would really much rather find it being a medical issue. And that's why so many people are so extreme, rule out pain first. And I'm not saying you shouldn't rule out pain first. You should. But there comes a point when it's pretty obvious that it's not pain and people are still looking for pain. I get horses in here pretty regularly that there is a pain issue. There is something physical going on. I just hauled a horse to the vet last week because there was something physical going on. Minor thing, wasn't a big deal. But you have to really look at the horse, evaluate the horse, treat the horse as what's going on there, not what you would like the problem to be. Any more questions? Yeah, so the tail is swishing because there's pain. Let's talk about that. The tail swishing can mean pain, but it's also works like ears. If I'm bending one direction, the tail's going to go that direction. If I'm bending another direction, I expect the tail to go that direction. The tail is an extension of the spine going all the way through. And very often, and you see this a lot with Hank too, especially with Hank, very often if I ask the hip to go this way, tail goes that way. If I ask the hip to go this way, tail goes that way because the tail is just an extension of the spine. As the hip goes, so should the tail. So that people put way more into the tail, and I'm going to talk about it kind of a different direction in a minute. People put way more into the tail than what they should. And a horse will show that they're mad, frustrated, angry, stiff. That'll all show in the tail just like it shows in the ears. Just because the tail moves, the tail does something, does not mean there's pain. And several years ago, I'm going to talk about the National Reining Horse Association specifically. They really got heavy on the tail being resistance. And if the horse was showing in reining and that tail was doing a lot, that was resistant. And good trainers know that it can be resistance, but it's not always resistance. And National Reining Horse Association, kind of the way they started their judging school stuff, it was pretty much always to be taken as resistance. And what happened was good horses were being docked in their scores because the tail was moving, and Hank's very expressive with his tail when I ride him, very. And good horses were being docked because the tail was expressive. Just like the ears, just like the face. When I work a cow, that horse has a lot of expression in its face. You watch Hank when I work a cow, he has a lot of expression in his tail. And what was happening, good horses were being docked, so people started deadening tails, which that doesn't mean that's a good reason to dock a tail, to deaden a tail. It doesn't mean you should. But what happened was a bad decision about the perception of tails brought about bad actions on people. And a lot of the comments that I see about the tail is dead, the tail is the tail is moving, the horse is in pain, that's not just simply not true. And the people that make those comments just aren't educated enough. And those type of comments, those owners, those horse people should learn and educate themselves instead of making comments that are negative across the industry, that come across negative, that are just not. Now she's resistance to the right. Let's turn to the left. As I'm walking her around here, I'm steering her around, and I'm not talking a whole lot about what I'm doing except once in a while. A lot of this with her, I'm just asking to go over here, asking to go over there, not really making a huge deal about it because I want her to get soft and relaxed. She gets soft and relaxed, then a lot of the resistance issues that I'm going to have is going to go away. See her pick, I don't know if I had my back to the camera. She just picked her head up kind of high when I asked her to step around. That was heavy on the shoulder. She had to get her head up to get her shoulder up to step around. That's a sign of resistance. That's the kind of things that matter. Tail moving around don't matter. If a horse is in pain, it is going to show that pain in lots of other ways before it shows in the tail. Another question? Okay, explain how important all the tools are to control a horse's body. I think I probably could make a whole series of videos on that, but we'll talk about it. It is very important. So as I'm riding her around, sometimes I'll neck rein her. You'll see me reach down and point her nose. Always going to have my legs are going to be doing something. Sometimes I'll just have my calves up against her like here. Sometimes I'll push a little harder. Sometimes I'll add a little spur. It's all communication. Everything about how I interact with this horse is communication, whether it's communication with my direct rein, my indirect rein, my legs, my calves, my thighs, my spurs, my core. It's all communication. If I steer this way, but my core goes that way, I'm giving her kind of opposite communication. My hand is saying go that way, but my body is saying go this way. It's all communication. And you have to learn to be as good of a communicator with your horse as you can be. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. But the better communicator you are with your horse, the better your horse is going to understand and the better you're going to get along. You should be able to just walk and know every time this front foot is step, step, step. You should know that every front foot, back foot, step, step. You should be able to tell that by relaxing your body. If you can't, work on it. It's not hard. Just get rid of, everybody wants to kind of balance on the horse's face. Just set your reins down and just let the horse walk and think about the horse moving. Relax your hips. I guess she's going to go to the camera. Relax your hips and just really try to melt into the horse's movement, because that's all communication. If I am not melting into the horse's movement and moving with the horse, our communication is not very good. So every aspect about my body is going to communicate with her in some kind of way. And I generally say that everything you do should take like 5 seconds to get from 0 to 100%. 100% is like yelling at the horse. Communicate. You want it to be as soft as you can get away with, but as firm as it has to be.
Carol says, I have a yearling who is partially trained to lead. He seems to have a very baby brain and has a hard time keeping his attention on me for more than a minute. Any suggestions so I don't dull?
Okay. A yearling that's partially trained to lead has a short attention span, and any suggestions so that you don't dull him. That really sounds like a pretty typical yearling. Um, there are lots of ways you can do that with the yearling. I am not one that typically does a lot of groundwork with a young horse. Basically, I want to be able to catch them, put a halter on them, pick up their feet, doctor on them if I need to. That is generally what I want of my yearlings. But they do need to lead. There's several ways you can do that. Uh, the smaller yearlings, I'll do that off of a long lead line. Basically, just walk and go someplace. If they want to go that way, we'll go this way. They want to go this way, we'll go that way. Just kind of point their nose. Usually, a yearling, you can turn their head and get them not so much off balance, but kind of standing in an awkward standing position so that to get more comfortable standing, they just take a step in the direction that you want to go in. That's really that simple. Now, if I have a yearling that is really defiant to being led, I'll pony the yearling off of Bob. Uh, and basically, I'm going to get the lunge line and we're just going to walk. I'll try to keep it loose. You want to try to not pull hard on a yearling. But the other side of that is this goes back to that ruler. You got that ruler. That horse needs to be at 6 with his leading. Number 1 means it won't lead at all. Number 12 means it won't come out of your pocket. It needs to be at 6. You have to be able to lead the horse. You don't really want to put more pressure than what's necessary on the horse's skeletal system. But the other side of that is you also don't want a 2-year-old that don't lead. You got to get him in the middle. So you want to address that in as safe a way as possible. I usually do that off of ponying. That's just what I'm comfortable with. I can take that rope, I take a little loop and take a dally, and then I can position Bob so that the colt doesn't get too much pressure. So it depends on what you're comfortable with and comfortable with your horse. Ponying is usually my go-to in that situation.
Thanks, Josh Akiva for the
Oh, thank you for the super chat. Super chat.
and this is talking about I think
Uh huh.
in, when you were in the stall doing a repeat, is there an advantage to the exercise in the stall versus around him? I get more nervous and
Okay, so the blue roan that I was working her feet in the stall, the one that tried to kick at me, and they get nervous in a confined space like the stall. Is it an advantage to doing it in a stall versus in a round pen? So in a stall, we are in a smaller area, and it does put me in a more risky position. It can be. In the round pen, you can get some separation. You're in a less risky position. That's all true. The other side of that is because I can keep that horse connected with me, and you saw the lead line that I had, and I kept it short so the horse would turn its head to me. Because we were in the stall, when the horse did not want me to touch her legs, there was no place to run off to like there would have been in a round pen. So if we would have been working in the round pen, what I probably would have had to do was lunge her down a little bit to get her to want to stand and then go do the work. I typically don't like to lunge a horse down if I can help it. I want the horse to do what I ask it to do off of a fresh mind without lunging it down, because once you start that, that's a hard habit to break. So if you're not comfortable working it in a stall, then definitely keep yourself safe. But in that smaller area, I knew I could keep myself safe, and I knew that I could get more done without getting the horse worked up, because she is just a 2-year-old. I really don't want to lunge her a lot. I don't want to put that stress on her if I can help it. So it's just a better situation. I could get it done easier on her, easier on me in the stall. What would I have done if she would have bit me? So at that point, if she would have tried to bite, if she would have bit me, I would have pushed her head away and probably backed her up and made her move her feet. I would not have done anything really drastic at that point. I was watching her, and I made a comment in the video about I thought that she had turned her head thinking about biting me. If I'm doing it as good as I would like to say I can do it, she never would have bit me, because I'm watching her, and I would have put my hand up and stopped it before it happened. But now if I would have missed the signs coming and she would have bit me, I probably would have just taken the halter and bounced the halter and backed her feet up and made her move her feet, maybe back in a couple circles, pull her forward in a couple circles. That's all I would have done at that time. It's a good opportunity to talk about the ruler again. So 6 is a horse that has a perfect head. Will let you rub all over their head, rub all over their ears, doesn't bite, doesn't get in your space. Perfect horse. 1 is a horse that is head shy, and you can't get your head on their head. You can't touch their ears. 12 is a horse that bites and is always after you. Okay? 2 extremes, 6 is in the middle. You have a horse that's on the 12, and he needs to be moved down to the 6. How are you going to make that horse a little bit head shy? There's things that, like I said, that you typically would ever do, because you don't want to make a horse head shy. But you have a horse that won't get its head out of your space, wanting to bite on you, wanting to chew on you. How are you going to show that horse he needs to be 6? It might be a little bit of a slap. Not going to hit him hard, but I'm going to want to let him know this is not acceptable. Where a horse that is already at 1 and you can't touch their head, you're definitely not going to do anything aggressive towards them. They're the ones you're going to be petting on. So at one end of the ruler, on the 1, you're going to be petting on them, trying to bring them up to 6. At the other end, you're going to be pushing the head away, maybe pushing the head away a little more assertively to bring it down to 6. Now, when you get to 6, you're not going to keep going. If you have your horse at 1 and you're petting on him to bring him up to 6, you get to 6, you're going to stop petting on him. You're not going to keep pushing him up to 12. And if you have a horse at 12 and you're pushing his head away to try to bring him down to 6, you're not going to keep going once you get to 6. So everything is a balance there. You cannot say, well, you shouldn't say, I'm never going to do this thing, because there are situations where that thing might be the right thing to do. If I have a horse and his ears is laid back flat on his head and he's coming at me with his teeth, and the only thing I have in my hand to stop that is a lunge whip, I'm going to use the lunge whip. You shouldn't say never. Now, whether that's the right thing to do, that's your call. But it might be, it might not be. Always get that horse towards that 6, always in the middle. Another question?
Yeah, one more about that video.
Okay.
I love this. You said she doesn't seem like she wants to fight. Do you have a link for a video of working with picking up the feet on a horse that does fight?
Okay, so in that video, I said that I didn't think the horse wanted to fight, and I really don't. I think she don't want me to pick up her feet. I really don't think she really don't think she's afraid to have them touched. I think she just don't want to give up that protective comfort that she's got. So as far as working a horse that does want to fight with their feet, probably the videos of me working Mia with the rope around her butt. She wanted to fight. She wanted to try to kill that rope. So that was a good example of a horse that was really aggressive towards the rope. And with every horse, you have to kind of assess what's going on. I really don't think that the roan was wanting to. She didn't want me touching her feet, but she really didn't want to hurt me either. One thing I did notice with that roan that is going to be a big issue later, and we're going to talk about this as her videos go through. When I was rubbing her, and it was a good thing, her ears were in a position. Her expression was telling me something. When I started rubbing down her leg, and I knew I was getting into a position where she didn't want me to, her expression on her face was exactly the same. Her expression never changed. So that is something we're going to talk about in the videos with her going through the future as we go on with her videos. That's going to be a really big deal. That's going to mean that whatever she does going forward, she's not going to give much warning of what's going to come. She's going to, it's just going to happen. Horses like that are a lot more dangerous to work from the standpoint of they don't tell you what's about to happen. Horses like her, she's resistant. She don't want to, but she tells me what she's going to do way before she does it. This horse ain't going to hurt nobody from as long as you pay attention to what she tells you. That roan's a little bit more dangerous horse just because she doesn't tell you what she's going to do before she does it.
You also had a name suggestion on YouTube for the road instead of Zara. Zara.
Yeah, that I had. We were talking about a name for her because I think her name was Fancy, and I already had a Fancy in here for before for playlist stuff, and Raven suggested Zorro, and then somebody said Zara. So that's probably what we're going to go with. Zara, I like that. It means princess. Yeah. Yeah, sounds good to me. So I'll probably go into that playlist and see if I can edit that name. I think I can, and I'll change it to Zara, and that's what her videos will be about. Since I've done that video, I've worked with her feet. I actually recorded her out here yesterday with a tarp and a flag, and that video will be out soon. Uh, she's gonna be a pretty neat horse. I'm looking forward to how she comes along. But as I've been walking her around, see how she's gotten relaxed. I really just walk and steer is all I've asked her to do. Move her body off of my leg. Once in a while, she'll kind of get stiff and say no. But as I put leg on her, her head is not coming up as often. Once in a while, it'll come up with resistance. Her momentum, her rhythm is staying pretty good. This is progress. And sometimes this is what it takes to get the horse to relax. It's basically I'm just trying to de-escalate her resistance. You go into a situation where people are hollering. Well, if you start hollering too, you're just going to escalate the situation. So I got on her, and she was basically resistant. No, I don't want to. Well, I just brought my energy level down, walked around, say, hey, let's go over here. Hey, let's go over there. And that mentally, that is what it needed, what she needed mentally to help the resistance. Resistance is always mental. We see it physically, we feel it physically, but resistance is mental. Resistance is in the mind. Relax the mind, and then the resistance just kind of melts away. Any other questions? Okay. So I think we're going to go ahead and end it for today with Now my mind went blank. Can't remember her name. Terrible with names if you didn't already know that. So we're going to end it today, and I'll have more videos of her in the future. I thank everybody for joining me for the video, for the live training, and I thank you for all your. Oh, we got one more question?
No, Hope.
Oh, Hope. Oh, yeah, Hope. Hope's her name. I'm terrible with names. I'll tell you a story before I go away. So, a lot of you know about my wife, Allison. We started dating. I think we were, well, I know we were 15 when we started dating. I used to keep her name wrote on my hand so that I could remember her name. I probably kept it there about 2 weeks because I am terrible with names. So, 2 weeks I had her name wrote on my hand. I'd write it down on a piece of paper, go take a shower, and come back right on my hand again. Sounds terrible. But this is Hope. I'll have more videos of her in the future. Until next time, thank you for watching.